Okay, so we're going to go through the practice test 1. This is from the official guide to the TOEFL. Here on my screen it's the 5th edition, but this first practice test is the same as in the 4th edition. So let's get started. So this is still the previous version of the exam where there's 20 minutes per reading passage and a total of 60 minutes. The new version of the exam is about 17-18 minutes per passage, and there are no longer 14 or 12 to 14 questions. There are now 10 questions per passage, and a total of about 57 minutes. So it's just, or 54 minutes, reducing it a few minutes. Okay, so let's take a look at this passage. So this is the 19th century politics in the United States. Now the way it looks on the screen here is a little misleading because on the actual exam it would be split screen. So it wouldn't be all of this text from side to side. So that is not the best way here to prepare. So I'll scroll down. Now what I would normally recommend is, well, there are 3 things when students ask about, like, what should they do in the first few minutes with this reading passage. So one tip or one way to do this is to read the entire passage. But I actually would not recommend doing that because when you get to question number 1, it's going to be about the first paragraph. So by the time that you read the first paragraph and then get to the bottom paragraph, there's a chance that you're going to forget what was in the first paragraph, and what is in your short-term memory would be this last paragraph that you read. So I would recommend in that case, read the first paragraph and then go to question number 1 and 2. And then little by little read through each paragraph as you're going through the questions until finally you get a general understanding of the text paragraph by paragraph as you're answering the questions. But when you are about to finish the text or finish the set of questions and get to the last question, which is either a summary question or a table question, what I would recommend is that you go through and skim through the entire text so that you can refresh your memory on that. So you see the big picture and you are a little bit more sensitive to the frequent ideas or big ideas, main ideas that are in the text. So here when I click next, now this is more accurate to the way it would appear on the exam, where I would have the text on one side and then the question on the other. Now with the 10 questions, so here they give us 13, but of the 10 questions that it would be on the current version, there are fewer vocabulary questions. So previously students were usually asking a lot about vocabulary learning strategies, and now it's mainly just about one vocabulary question per passage. So the weight of vocabulary questions has diminished now. Okay, so this first one, vocabulary question, one thing I would recommend is getting familiar with Latin, Greek prefixes, roots, and suffixes, because that in some cases can help you pick apart the pieces of a word and understand them. So for example, if I understand the word measure as a as a root word in here, and I know that im means a negative, so meaning like not measure. And able, if it were A-B-L-E, would mean that it is possible to do this action. And when we change this ly, that becomes an adverb. So this is describing an action that cannot be measured. Just by picking this apart. Next, I do need to look at how the word is being used in the sentence. And to say, during his administration, he immeasurably enlarged the power. So enlarged is also a context clue. So we have this idea that it can't be measured and large, like to become larger. So I would say this combination of these two ideas would be greatly enlarged. So don't just look at the word by itself. Also look at the context of this sentence, and perhaps even in the paragraph, there might be some other clues in here. So if it says like, so this, I would say greatly enlarged the power. Let me see if there's anything else in this paragraph that might refer to power. So he redefined the character of the presidential office and its relationship to the people. And to say it's the direct representative. There aren't really too many context clues there to show that this, how big, how much power did the president have. But just taking these two words together, enlarge and this not being able to measure it, the closest meaning for that would be greatly. So I'm going to go with greatly, and then I will move on to the next question. Vocabulary questions, I usually don't want to spend too much time on them. Now that there are 54 minutes for the 3 reading passages, you basically have about a minute and a half per question, and on average. So for a medium difficulty question, you might be spending about a minute and a half. If it is an easier question, perhaps like a detailed question or a vocabulary question, you want to allocate some of that time by going faster on this. So perhaps taking 45 seconds or taking a minute. And that would mean that you have 30 seconds to 45 seconds left over that you can give to a harder question. So if something is very hard, like a long paragraph and it's an inference question or a rhetorical purpose question, you may want to spend a little bit more time on the harder questions and less time on the easier questions. Okay, next, this according to paragraph 1. So we want to see that and know that this is a detailed question, and we know that we're going to be looking for some of these keywords about the presidency of Andrew Jackson was especially significant for which of the following reasons. So basically what this means is why was it significant? What changed? And it's going to only be one of these answers. So this is not an exception question. This is a detailed question. There's only one of these choices that is going to be possibly correct. Now, with this question and looking at the significance, this is especially significant, I would go ahead and look at these answer choices because I'm looking for one of these that would be appropriate in this paragraph. So I'm going to say the president granted a portion of his power to the Senate. No. And what's going on here is that they use a key word like the word Senate, but what I see in the text is that it doesn't say that he gave power to the Senate. He lectured to the Senate. He spoke in front of the Senate and he gave a speech. So this would be mixing up some key words. We see the word power, we see Senate, and you can also see on the screen here, power and Senate. A distracted student could maybe see those two together and guess that that's the answer. So be careful if you see some directly quoted key words in the text there, and if they're being, the relationship between those words is not accurate, that is a trick. It's a trap to catch students who are getting distracted. Okay. Next, the president began to address the Senate on a regular basis. So we need to see if there's something about regular. I would again say no. It doesn't say anything about the when he talked to the Senate. So when it opposed him is not a when in terms of like no, yeah, this is changing the meaning. So this is not a frequency. It's that if the Senate opposed him, then he spoke up and explained what his belief about the presidency. Okay, it was the beginning of the modern presidency. Here I would say yes, because that's also the beginning of the first sentence. So the development of the modern presidency began with Andrew Jackson, who swept to power. So this is, I would say, the most accurate choice there. And then this last one, it was the first time that the Senate had been known to oppose the president. This is a detail that is not mentioned in the text. We don't know if it was the first time. They didn't say that. But what we do know is that this modern presidency started with Andrew Jackson. So that's really what is significant. So these first two answer choices, they are kind of taking some keywords but messing up the relationship between those words. This on a regular basis, it doesn't talk about that frequency, and a student might get distracted by the word when. And this last one, it does not mention this detail. So you can have here ideas that are kind of changing the meaning, changing the relationship between those words, maybe taking some direct quote of that and distracting the student. And lastly, this one, it was the beginning of the modern presidency. That is a correct detail I would put there. Okay. Next. Okay, the author mentions, so this is a reference question. It's a rhetorical purpose. So why does the author mention this? So it's an example of who. And here I would say these bankers and investors. So it is a longer sentence of these two sentences. So I do need a double check of how is this being used in the text. So I'm going to look in here. So that Democrats tended to view society as a continuing conflict between the people, farmers, planters, workers, and a set of greedy aristocrats. This paper money aristocracy of bankers and investors manipulated the banking system for their own profit, Democrats claimed, and sapped the nation's virtue by encouraging speculation and the desire for sudden unearned wealth. So these bankers and investors so it doesn't say which one was in favor of his presidency. It's mostly showing these two groups of opposition. This unearned wealth, sudden unearned wealth, that could be related to this this one's right here. So the Democrats here did not want this unfair system in place. And I would say not this one. And I would say, yeah, this one, the people that Democrats claimed were unfairly becoming rich. So unfair, I would say also this related to this manipulated, the banking system, and that they're taking the virtue of working hard or like wealth that comes from hard work and not just through speculation or making money by making a profit from not actual work. So this group of these bankers and investors, yeah, these are unfairly becoming rich. This one is a little harder to detect, like to eliminate some of these wrong choices. But we also needed to see if this is in the paragraph, if it's not mentioned or mentioned. So here we don't see the favor of his presidency. We don't see Roy we see it part of his second term, but we don't see whether the Democrats or the Whigs were in favor. We don't exactly see who. Here they have the phrase simple agrarian republic. So, and the Democrats wanted the rewards of the market without sacrificing the features of a simple agrarian republic. So these are the Democrats who are interested in this, not the bankers and the investors. So this is referring to the Democrats, not the bankers. And it doesn't say that these investors were supporting the Democrats. So these are two of these are not mentioned, and then one of these is referring to somebody else. So this choice B is what is left as a possibility of who is unfairly becoming rich. Okay, next, this according to, this is another detail question. So I'm looking for some of the key words here. Whigs believed that commerce and economic development would have which of the following effects? So commerce and economic development, I need to find that in this text. So for them, commerce and economic development were agents of civilization. So this idea of agents of civilization means it would like everybody would it would make things grow. Also here, this economic growth would benefit everyone by raising national income and expanding opportunity. So promote the advancement of society as a whole, not prevent conflict, and it wouldn't be creating these positions, and it wouldn't cause these disagreements. So the first choice, A, this agents of civilization, I would say is somewhat of a rephrasing, or this development and advancement, which is also related here to this economic growth would benefit. So here. So I'm going to go with choice A. These other three just are not correct on there. Okay. Next, another detailed question. And the role, the view of the Whig Party's view of the role of government. So this is the last sentence here. The government's responsibility was to provide a well-regulated economy that guaranteed opportunity for citizens of ability. So my answer is going to be this, and I need to see which one of these reflects this idea. So it's not the conflict, it is regulating. So maintain an economy, so that'd be to kind of well regulate the economy and give citizens of ability, I would say, is a rephrasing, capable citizens to benefit. And guaranteeing opportunity, this would be allow. So these are a couple rephrasing of these vocabulary words using synonyms that they're expressing a similar idea here. So if you see an answer that looks like there are several synonyms that express the same idea, more or less, that's probably going to be your answer choice here. Okay. Next, okay, another vocabulary question. Incline is a verb. Ation is the noun form of this. And incline, and if you can think of this in like a hill or a mountain or stairs, would be like going up, and it would be the fact that something has gone up. Okay, now, despite Andrew Jackson's inclination to be a strong president, so this is a bit more of like he had a tendency. So I know that word as I'm a native speaker. I did not look at these choices right here, but I would say looking at this word in the sentence, kind of replacing it, I would say that he tended to be a strong president. So I would call that as a tendency. Like he leaned towards that. So I would go with tendency. And these other words do not fit. They do not work if you replace them in the sentence. Okay. Paragraph 4. So there's a lot of detailed questions in this one. A Democrat would be most likely to support government action in which of the following areas? So I need to find areas that are mentioned here. So, and also words that would be support and rejection. So we have the word Democrats also rejected. And they say religion and politics should be kept clearly separate. And they generally opposed humanitarian legislation. So I'm going to look for like religion and politics and humanitarian legislation as wrong choices. So that they support the government. So say not humanitarian legislation, not state religion. So I would see here one of these choices. So I've eliminated 2 wrong choices and trying to get this down. And so, yeah, the Democrats believed in limited government, and government's role in the economy was to promote competition by destroying monopolies and special privileges. So this destroying monopolies, I would put this as choice C. That is where they would support. And I will double check the wording of this question, make sure I didn't accidentally skip something or see the word not and misinterpret the question. So I would say this one, destroying monopolies, that would be the answer choice I would go with. Another vocabulary question, so concept. Indeed, for Whigs, the concept of government promoting the general welfare went beyond the economy. So concept is like an idea. Yeah, I would just go with the word idea. That one is a bit easier. Next, inference question here. So this one, I would read the whole paragraph based on what I observe here about what are we looking at. So variations in political beliefs within the Whig Party, and what does that infer? So these would be bits and pieces of information, and we need to kind of create a big picture in our head from these pieces of information and create a conclusion from that. And specifically this one of these political beliefs. Okay, so Whigs, in contrast to the Democrats, viewed government power positively. So that means they wanted probably big government. They believe that it should be used to protect individual rights and public liberty, and had a special role where individual effort was ineffective. By regulating the economy and competition, the government could ensure equal opportunity. Indeed, for Whigs, the concept of government promoting the general welfare went beyond the economy. In particular, Whigs in the northern sections of the United States also believed that government power should be used to foster the moral welfare of the country. They were much more likely to favor social reform legislation and aid to education. So it looks like the location in the part of the country is that there would be regional differences. Okay. Yeah, regional interests. They reflected regional interests. So because they talk about this being in northern sections. This one would kind of reflect that idea that I see looking at that detail about the location. Okay, next, 10. This is an exception question. So of these 4 choices, 3 of them are in the paragraph, and this is a longer paragraph, I have to double check this. 3 of them are in there, 1 of them is not. So I need to just do a process of elimination very quickly, if possible. And see. So looking at my choices, okay, workers unhappy. Is there anything about talking about workers? Large group in society, workers. I could win an election by the rich. The Whigs, however, enjoy disproportionate on businesses. Whigs appeal to planters who need credit. Equal sales, and to workers who wished to improve themselves. So to improve themselves doesn't quite say that they're unhappy, just that they want better conditions. So I'm going to hold on to this one, but okay. Democrats were supported. Also, yeah, in this case, number A, it's talking about the Whigs. So, okay. So perhaps the A is that one. Democrats attracted farmers, isolated from the market. Or uncomfortable with it. Workers alienated from the emerging industrial. So workers alienated from the emerging industrial system. I think this word here, these words could, well, alienated means that they're pushed aside. It not necessarily mean that they're unhappy, but that they're not involved in it. They're not part of the process. Okay. Rising entrepreneurs. Yes, rising entrepreneurs who wanted to break monopolies. So that is there. Individuals seeking to open the economy to newcomers. So, and open the economy to newcomers. So that is in the text. Planters involved in international trade. Just says these. It says isolated from the market. It doesn't say international trade. More that they're isolated there. So I think I'm going to say this: workers alienated from the emerging industrial system. That would be the workers who are unhappy with that industrial system. So I'm going to go with A, C, and D as being in the paragraph, and this international trade. I would say that's one is the exception there because it says that they were more isolated. Okay. Okay, now this one is a rephrasing. Now it's important to look at the instructions for this kind of a question and to see that we need to keep essential information. We can skip over some non-essentials, and we need to make sure that the wrong choices, these are changing the meaning or they're leaving out something important. Okay, so what I will do here is look at the sentence. Usually it could be a little bit complex. I might need to pick it apart, understand it in my head, and see if I can try to explain it to somebody. Okay. The Whigs were strongest in the towns, cities, and those rural areas that were fully integrated into the market economy. That's where they were strong. Whereas, so this is a contrast word, Democrats dominated areas of semi-subsistence farming that were more isolated and languishing. So languishing is that they're having problems, economic problems. So so basically Whigs in towns and cities that were part of the economy, and Democrats where it was basically kind of poor farming and isolated. Okay, so that would be this contrast with a whereas as well. I think the B, Whig and Democrat areas of influence were naturally split between urban and rural areas. Here it's partially correct. no, actually, no, it's wrong. Because it's the Whigs were in urban areas and rural areas. So no, this is it's messing up the information. That's not correct. Okay. The semi-subsistence farming areas dominated by Democrats became increasingly isolated by the Whigs' control of the market economy. That is a wrong choice as well. That's it's not saying that the Whigs controlled the economy. It's saying that Whigs, the representation, they were in those areas. Okay, so not B, not C. The Democrats' power was greatest in poorer areas, while, so there's a contrast word, the Whigs were strongest in those areas where the market was already fully operating. So I guess I would go with D. Let me go back to A. Whigs were able to attract support only in the wealthiest parts of the economy because Democrats dominated another. So not A. That's just a wrong idea. Okay, so not A, not B, not C. I would go with D. It doesn't exactly say town, cities, and rural areas, but the overall idea is that these places were integrated in that economy, so where the market was operating. Okay. Now, this next one I think will probably be a sentence insertion. Yeah, okay. So here, I need to look at some context clues. So this new party argued against the policies of Jackson. So this is referring to something that is just before it. Against the policy of Jackson and his party in a number of important areas, beginning with the economy. A number of that would be part of a general statement. Then it would be getting probably into something specific. So looking for a word this referring to a party, and I do see Whig Party as it could possibly be number one. Okay, his opponents had gradually come together to form the Whig Party. So to form, that would be something new. And then looking at that sentence, this new party argued against the policy of Jackson. So it is also referring to Jackson in that sense as well. And his party in a number of important areas, beginning with the economy. Whigs and Democrats held different attitudes toward the changes brought about by the market, banks, and commerce. So that's the economy. So I would go with number one as saying that it fits there. These other options, it doesn't. Like greedy aristocrats, that's not a party. Desire for sudden that's not a party. So I would go with number one. And then lastly, now we have the summary question. To summarize this, so we've got looking at the instructions, you want to get familiar with those and seeing how 3 of these choices are going to be correct. And of the other wrong choices, we have a minor point and something that is not in there. I would also add to this just information that be kind of like a wrong connection. Okay. Also, if your short-term memory is kind of fading, don't hesitate to click the passage button to review that and remember and double check. Remember that it'll be a full screen image. Okay, so the political system of the United States was strongly influenced by the social and economic circumstances of the time. They developed in response. I would not say that he served as leader of both the Democratic and Whig parties. The Democratic Party primarily represented the interests of market, banks, and commerce. In contrast, the Whigs favored government aid for education. Fundamental difference in Whigs involved the importance of the market. The role of government in the lives of people was an important political distinction. Yeah, I would go with the role of the government. There was a paragraph about that. Also, this importance of the market. And lastly, I think this might be too small. This might be a minor point. I think this also would be a minor point. I'm going to take a look at the passage again, see if this would be A. Close that again. I think it would be appropriate to use this one where it's talking about both the Democrat and the Whig Party, not just one of them in isolation. So I would say not B, C, and D. I would go with this one. Okay. And next. Okay, so that would be the end of that text. I'm going to go back to the menu and see if we can check the answers. See if I can go to the options. No. I can't see those answers until I finish all of these questions. Okay, I will stop here then.